Right guys and girls, this is a long playing review for Relentless on the Amstrad CPC, released by Psytronik Software in 2013. And yes, this is a homebrew game, and I'm ashamed to say it's taken me nearly 8 years to get around to doing a long playing review here on the channel. Well, one of the reasons was my shoot 'em up skills weren't quite there and I just couldn't beat the damn game. But now I can, after a few years practicing the Tubers high score competition and the countless shoot 'em ups that we've played there. Anyway, this is another quality game from Paul Kuistra under his alias Axelay, and he specialises in technically advanced, very smooth moving shoot 'em ups. And Relentless was kind of the last of these games until his soon to arrive new game in Corsair. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the name, but if not, here's a quick timeline of Axelay's games, starting with the excellent Star Saber in 2007, Dead on Time in 2010, Sub Hunter in 2011, Edge Grinder in 2011, then Super Edge Grinder in 2012, then of course this game Relentless in 2013. He also had Mega Blaster's Escape from the Castle in the Clouds in 2015, and lastly Dragon Attack entered into the CPC Retro Dev in 2016 and is a proper bullet hell shooter and highly recommended. Anyway, let's get the game booted up. So as we boot this up, there is like kind of an intro sequence which has some very, very nice music. So I'm going to keep quiet and let you guys and girls enjoy it in full. Here we go. So there you go. That was cool. A lovely piece of music. There's some really nice artwork, of course, as well there. And we're going to have a nice tune here on the title screen as well, which I'll let play in full before we get into the game, which will start about the 6-minute mark if you want to skip forward. But during this, I will just talk about the people behind the game. Of course, we already mentioned Axelay, his real name Paul Kuistra, and I've had the distinct pleasure and opportunity to chat to Paul and interview him about the making of the game and the coding techniques behind it. So if you really like nerdy technical details, well, you're going to be in heaven. I'll talk about that when the game has started so we can see it in action. But yeah, I'm going to go into lots of nerdy technical details as best I can. I'm trying to translate his coding talk into words and phrases that I can understand as not a coder of Amstrad games, and hopefully you guys will understand too. Anyway, the game will start about the 6-minute mark if you want to skip forward, and if you don't like all that kind of talk and you don't like a commentary or a review, if you ask nicely in the comments, I can upload this as a separate video, unlisted without any commentary and just a pure long play. I'm happy to do that. Anyway, we can see the credits on the title screen there, obviously Axelay. Graphics by Rex Bang. Now, Rex Bang, he's worked on most of Axelay's games and has done worked on lots of demos as well, and is an important part of the Amstrad scene, of course. Music by the always excellent Tom and Jerry, which is an alias for Hervé Monchartre. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, or Hervé Monchartre. Anyway, similarly, he has done lots of work on demos and is also another important part of the Amstrad scene, as well as doing music for most of Axelay's games. Some of his other notable games are C&G Soft's Bubble Bobble remake, Bubble Bobble for CPC. He also did the music on Frez Fighter, Ninja Carnage and Open Tower Defense recently, and also the Shadows of Sergoth mega game a couple of years back. So very, very cool. And that should be about the full loop of music here. So we'll kick the game off about now. And we are playing on the hardest difficulty. And here we are. So as you can see, it's a horizontally scrolling shoot 'em up. It's nearly full screen. And as you can see, guys, it is moving at a liquid smooth 50 frames per second. And that's including the sprite movement as well as scrolling the background. And as you can see, it's a really fast-paced shoot 'em up with an interesting graphical style. And there's a reason behind that, which we'll come to in a little bit. So obviously the aim of the game is to get through, I think, to 6 zones, survive, score as many points as possible. And really, this is kind of more of a high-score attack game than it is a reach the end of the game, destroy all the bosses, and be done with it. Now this is a game you come back to try and improve your score on. Now as you notice at the middle top of the screen there's a bonus bar, and that builds up, that red bar, every time you destroy a wave of enemies. But the bar is always constantly trickling down, so you have to keep destroying whole waves of enemies at a time to keep that bar ticked up for that bonus score. At the highest point it will give you 1,000 points for destroying a wave of enemies. And as the red bar disappears, you get less and less bonus score. And we moved into zone 2. So it's a relatively short game, but it's a very, very clever game. So let's get into it. Now, for those of you that remember, I covered doing smooth hardware scrolling on my Mission Genocide video on how that game achieved a 50 frames per second vertical scroll. Because most people don't realise that the Amstrad CPC can do hardware scrolling. It's assumed it doesn't have this, with all the abundance of poor scrolling games on the Amstrad compared to, say, the Commodore 64, which has dedicated video chips to do this. But what the Amstrad has is a very difficult beast to tame. It's the CRTC chip, which is a video display chip with CRTC standing for Cathode Ray Tube Controller. This chip has registers you can change, specifically R12 and R13, to define the start address of the screen. You keep incrementing these values and it will scroll the screen. But of course you have to update to show the new graphics, and it's not entirely smooth though. But you can use a different register to help fix this. The R3 register is for horizontal sync width, which can have problems on non-Amstrad monitors, and the R5 register is for the vertical adjust, which we saw on Mission Genocide and works much better. So you're more likely to find vertical scrollers making use of R5 compared to horizontal scrollers with R3. The problem with R3 and R5 is it can cause instability issues with the screen, where you might find weird things happening at the edges and flickering. A good example of this is Danger Streak from Chip for horizontal scrolling and LED Storm for vertical. Also, when just using R12 and R13 registers to scroll the screen, it does so in 4 pixels at a time horizontally in mode 0, i.e. the 16 colour mode on the Amstrad. Because each character step is of course 4 mode 0 pixels wide. Scrolling 4 pixels at a time won't look very smooth, so Axelay blends 2 other techniques in to get it down to a 1 pixel scroll. The first technique we've already mentioned, using the CRTC register 3, or R3, which is the horizontal sync. This can do it in half a character, in this case 2 pixels at a time. So now we're moving the screen at 2 pixels. The second additional technique is that Axelay uses 2 screens in a standard hardware double buffer setup, where one screen is drawn 1 pixel offset horizontally to the other. With all 3 techniques blended together, we're now at a 1 pixel scroll at 50 frames per second. In simple terms, putting that all together with the right timing is incredibly hard though, of course, and it takes a talented person like Axelay to pull it off. Well, what about the problems of the edges of the screen looking rough and flickering we talked about a minute ago? Well, this is from using the R3 technique, which is shifting the screen right by half a character on the monitor. This means the screen is alternately shifting left and right, and you end up with half a character on the left or right side of the play area that needs to be covered. Relentless uses a black half character column to hide this, as Axelay feels this is more cleaner looking, but at the cost of consuming valuable CPU time. Some games though extend the width of the play area so the edges are outside the viewable area of the monitor, for example Elmer Krieger's Prehistoric 2 and Super Cauldron, or Out of This World from 1987. For those that know this technique, it's more obvious than say what Axelay has done here. Now that's just the screen. The sprites and moving them around smoothly are something entirely different. Now Axelay uses what he calls split bit planes for this, sometimes referred to as a dual play field. Before we get to that, let's explain bit planes. And thank you to Anthony Flack for this description. So in a Mode 0 screen you have 4 bits of info per pixel. This can be used to display 16 colours in a single bit plane or screen layer, or fewer colours in multiple bit planes. It just depends on how you treat the data. The normal way to split it up is to use 2 bits for the foreground plane and 2 bits for the background. This will give you a 4 colour background and 3 colours plus transparency for the foreground. The advantage is you can draw and erase to one plane and it doesn't affect the other plane because they never mess with each other's bits. The result? Some of the fastest sprite on background routines you can do on a CPC. The disadvantage is that you only get 4 background colours and 3 sprite colours in Mode 0. This is why games like Ghosts and Goblins look the way they do with limited colours for both sprite and background, but move smoothly. Additionally, even though 2x2 split is the usual, you can also split it 1x3, 7 colours plus transparent over 2, or 3x1 with 1 colour plus transparent over 8. So with Relentless in the split bit plane, or dual playfield technique, the 4 bit per pixel in Mode 0 is treated as 2 layers of 2 bits per pixel. 1 layer for sprites, which is 3 colours plus transparent, and 1 for backgrounds, 4 colours. And that is the usual arrangement for that technique. As we just complete the game here, there you go, you win. I haven't really talked much about the gameplay itself yet, I'll come back to that. So, as we're just talking about there, this is the usual arrangement for that technique, and this allows the sprites to be written to the screen over backgrounds without having to preserve or restore the background, so it's faster. The other part of making sprites faster is that all the frames are stored pre-shifted. What that boils down to is each sprite has its frames duplicated but shifted right 1 pixel to enable horizontal movement in 1 pixel steps, because a byte in Mode 0 is 2 pixels wide. But to get to the extra colours for the background you see here, remember that in Mode 0 you get 4 bits per pixel, but here because we're only left with 2 bits per pixel for the background with the split, for the extra colours, 2 of the background colours are changed under interrupt at 2 points on the screen to get a little extra colour. So if you look carefully, the background is in 4 colours over a black background, so it's changed now anyway. But basically this is just raster colour changes, and there you go. So that's all the technical geeky details there. I hope you found that interesting. I thought I'd do something a little bit different with this video and actually talk to the coder himself and get to learn a little bit about the techniques involved for myself and then relay it to you guys. So hopefully you found that interesting. As for the gameplay itself, it's fast, fun and furious. It's simple, but a really, really good high score attack game. And probably the best example of a smooth moving horizontally scrolling shoot 'em up on the Amstrad. I can't really think of a better horizontally scrolling shoot 'em up. The R-Type remake comes close. If you prefer more action and bosses and stuff like that, go for that. But this moves far smoother. And if you're after a high score attack game, one that you could come back to time and time again to try and improve on your score, or use in a competition for example, then Relentless is the game for you. And I'm going to score this 9 out of 10. It's one of the best shoot 'em ups ever on the Amstrad, and I highly recommend you check out Axelay's other games like Super Edge Grinder, Sub Hunter, Star Saber, the upcoming Corsair, and Dragon Attack for a bit of bullet hell action of course as well. And Dead on Time is another good one as well to check out. And yeah, I'm looking forward to Axelay's new game. Hopefully it will arrive soon. So look out for Corsair coming soon. You can find a first level demo of it out on the internet at the moment. But thank you very, very much for watching, guys. I hope you found that interesting. I hope you enjoyed this, and for God's sakes, go and give Relentless a blast. You will. It is as good as anything on the Commodore 64 and more. So 9 out of 10 for me. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please click a like below, leave a comment, and also subscribe if you haven't already. And over that way, there's another video for you to check out. Zypho out.